Reinvention is not an escape. It's an evolution. That distinction matters more than most people realize. In a world full of quick exits and impulsive rebrands, we've gotten used to the idea that if something doesn't fit, we just throw it out and start over. But the truth is, real transformation, meaningful, sustainable reinvention doesn't begin by running from something. It begins by reaching for something deeper, something more aligned with who we are becoming. When we talk about reinventing ourselves, the temptation is to make it dramatic. Quit the job, end the relationship, delete the history, clean the slate. That's the fantasy version. The version you see in movies, but real reinvention isn't loud like that. It's quiet, it's steady, and most importantly, it's rooted in self-awareness. You're not abandoning the person you've been. You're building on them, like layers of paint on a canvas, like chapters in a book. You're evolving the story, not rewriting it from scratch. There's an art to that, a hidden one. Think about it this way. Everything you've been through, every win, every loss, every scar and smile has shaped you into who you are today. To try and erase it all in the name of reinvention is not only unrealistic, it's unwise. The past isn't a prison. It's a foundation. It contains lessons, tools, and clues that inform your next step. Reinvention honors that past, even as it pushes you forward. Evolution isn't instant. In nature, it happens slowly, subtly, over time. The same is true for personal change. You won't feel it day to day. You'll still wake up tired. You'll still have doubts. You'll still carry parts of your old self. But little by little, as you make different choices, as you shift your mindset, as you show up with more purpose, something inside you starts to take shape. Not because you forced it, not because you flipped a switch, but because you honored the process. People often mistake dissatisfaction as a sign that they need to run. But sometimes that discomfort is just a signal that it's time to grow. Maybe your environment no longer reflects your values. Maybe your habits are outdated for the person you're trying to become. That's not a failure, that's data. That's feedback from your soul, and it's worth listening to. Reinvention isn't a betrayal of who you were. It's a commitment to who you're becoming. And that's where the magic lies. You're not hiding from your past. You're collecting the pieces of it that still serve you and using them to construct something new. Something more honest, more refined, more you, and let's be real, it's hard. Reinvention doesn't come with a roadmap. No one's going to hand you a certificate when you've made it. In fact, the people around you might not even notice right away. That's okay, because this process isn't for them. It's for you. It's not about proving anything. It's about aligning your actions with your inner compass, even if no one else gets it yet. There's bravery in that. There's wisdom in that. And there's a kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're not just reacting to life. You're shaping it, not with noise, not with declarations, but with choices, one after another, stacked over time, until one day you look in the mirror and realize you didn't just change, you grew. You evolved, you became someone truer. So no, reinvention isn't about running away, it's about stepping into who you could be, into what life is trying to teach you, into a version of yourself that's waiting not to be created from scratch, but to be uncovered layer by honest layer. That's not escape, that's evolution, and it's an art worth learning. Life doesn't come with autopilot. It's not a system you can program once and expect to carry you to the place you want to be, but many of us try to live that way. We fall into routines, follow expectations, stick to what's familiar. And before we know it, we're drifting. Not necessarily unhappy, not broken, just off course, unconsciously separated from the life we meant to live. That's where reinvention starts, not in the big breakdowns, but in the quiet realizations, the subtle ache of misalignment, the dull hum of dissatisfaction that creeps into your mornings. Maybe you've got a job that looks good on paper but drains you by noon. Maybe you've built a lifestyle that everyone else admires, but it doesn't feel like it's yours. Or maybe you've been living by default, choosing comfort over clarity, routine over reflection, and now you're wondering how you got here in the first place. The problem with drifting is that it's not always obvious while it's happening. One missed intention leads to another. One compromise becomes a pattern. 1 year turns into 5, and suddenly you're miles from the version of yourself you thought you were becoming. That's the danger of autopilot. It's subtle, it's comfortable, and it's deceptive. See, the world often rewards consistency, but not all consistency is created equal. Just because you're functioning doesn't mean you're fulfilled. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're growing. A lot of people are climbing ladders fast only to realize too late the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. Reinvention begins when you stop climbing long enough to ask, is this still right for me? And that question, that pause, is everything. It's in that pause that you take the wheel back. Living on autopilot is living without curiosity. You stop asking questions. You assume the way it is the way it has to be. You forget that every aspect of your life, your career, your habits, your identity, is editable. That realization isn't just freeing, it's powerful. Because when you remember you have agency, you remember you have options. And when you have options, you have room to grow. That growth begins with awareness. You can't reinvent what you don't acknowledge. You've got to become a student of your own life, observe your thoughts, track your emotions, notice the moments when you light up and the ones where you shut down. Patterns reveal priorities, and patterns also reveal pain. Your habits tell a story, listen to it. But awareness without action is just philosophy. The real shift happens when you act on what you notice. That might mean adjusting your environment, setting new boundaries, or trying something unfamiliar. It might mean ending a chapter that no longer serves you, even if it's comfortable, even if it's predictable. Reinvention requires the courage to disrupt what's convenient in order to build what's meaningful. And here's the thing, taking the wheel doesn't mean you have everything figured out. It just means you're willing to steer again, willing to say, this isn't where I want to be, and then actually do something about it. You don't need a perfect plan. You need presence. You need honesty. And you need movement, no matter how small. The process of reinvention is not a one-time event. It's a cycle. You'll catch yourself drifting again. That's okay. What matters is how quickly you recognize it. What matters is your ability to wake up, reorient, and course. Correct, not with panic, but with purpose. You were never meant to live asleep at the wheel. You were never meant to settle into a version of life that looks fine from the outside, but feels hollow on the inside. Reinvention is a call back to the driver's seat, a call to wake up to your own power, your own responsibility, your own potential. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's a quiet decision that says, I'm not going to coast anymore. Because the truth is, no one gets where they're going by accident, and no one becomes who they were meant to be by default. You've got to drive. The mirror is your compass. It doesn't lie, it doesn't flatter, it doesn't bend the truth to spare your ego. It simply reflects what is no filters, no edits, and yet most people avoid truly looking into it. Not the kind that hangs on the bathroom wall, but the kind that exists within. The internal mirror, the one that forces you to confront yourself without distraction, without noise, without performance. That's where real reinvention begins. You can't move in the right direction if you don't know where you stand. Most of us want clarity, we want answers, we want transformation, but we rarely take time to pause and really assess who we've become. We're too busy, too tired, too distracted by scrolling timelines, daily deadlines, and the pressure to keep up. But every journey worth taking begins with a moment of honesty. And that moment usually shows up when you finally dare to ask yourself, am I proud of the person I'm becoming? That question hits different when you look into your own eyes and realize you haven't asked it in years. This isn't about self-judgment, this is about self-inquiry. There's a difference. Judgment shames you for not being enough. Inquiry invites you to grow. Reinvention doesn't start with criticizing who you are. It starts with understanding who you are. What drives you? What drains you? What are you chasing and why? Until you know those answers, any change you make will be surface level. You'll swap roles, cities, titles, clothes, but inside, you'll be spinning in the same patterns. When you treat the mirror like a compass, it stops being a source of vanity and becomes a source of direction. It tells you what needs attention, not just what needs approval. You'll notice the way your energy shifts when you talk about certain topics. You'll feel the difference between a habit that numbs you and one that fuels you. You'll begin to hear the voice underneath the noise, the one that says, this isn't it, or keep going, or you're hiding, and you've got to listen to that voice. Reinvention is only possible when you stop lying to yourself. That's the hard truth. We all wear masks. We all build versions of ourselves designed to be accepted, admired, and protected. But over time, the mask sticks. We forget where the performance ends and the real self begins. The mirror strips that away. It demands you take responsibility for your reflection. If you're not showing up the way you want to, change it. If your values and your choices aren't lining up, realign them. No one else can do that for you. One of the most powerful practices you can adopt is a regular check-in with yourself. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be 10 quiet minutes in the morning, a walk without your phone, a journal entry at night, time spent asking, where am I out of sync, and what do I need to return to center? You don't need a therapist or a crisis to do this. You just need willingness. The reason this matters is because we're always becoming. Whether you're aware of it or not, every day you're shaping a future version of yourself. Every small decision, every repeated action, every belief you reinforce, it's all compounding. So the question isn't whether you're changing. The question is, are you changing intentionally? That's where the mirror matters most. It won't give you all the answers, but it will show you where to look. It will reveal the disconnect between your potential and your patterns. It will highlight the places you're stuck, the fears you've been avoiding, the truths you've buried under convenience. And once you see those things, you can't unsee them. That's the gift and the challenge of self-awareness. It doesn't let you hide, but that's also what makes it powerful. Because when you stop hiding from yourself, you stop settling for less than what you're capable of. You stop living based on other people's expectations and start living from your own alignment. That's how reinvention becomes real. Not through trends, not through external changes, but through a deeper relationship with yourself. So next time you find yourself lost, stuck, or just drifting, don't look outside first. Look in. The mirror is your compass not because it tells you where to go, but because it shows you where you are. And when you know where you are, you can finally start moving forward, with clarity, with purpose, and with truth. You can't repaint the house while standing inside. It might sound like a simple metaphor, but it speaks to a profound truth about personal growth and reinvention. When you're too close to something, too immersed in the data of your own life, it's nearly impossible to see what really needs to change. You become blind to your own patterns, numb to your own dissatisfaction. You normalize the things that are holding you back because they're familiar, comfortable, even if they're quietly suffocating you. The first step in reinvention often requires stepping outside of your own environment, mentally, emotionally, sometimes even physically. You have to get distance from the noise you're used to, the people who expect you to stay the same, the habits that have hardened into routine. It's in that space, that pause from the usual, where clarity has room to breathe. Distance gives perspective, and perspective is what allows you to tell the truth about what's actually happening inside your life. If you've ever taken a trip and suddenly felt more like yourself than you have in months, that's not a coincidence. It's not about the location, it's about the distance from your usual setting. When we remove ourselves from the context that constantly reinforces who we've been, we give ourselves permission to explore who we might become. It's not that your job, your city, or your relationships are necessarily wrong, but when you're in them all the time, you stop questioning them. You stop asking, is this helping me grow or just keeping me busy? That's why stepping back is not quitting, it's clarity. It's about seeing your life from a new angle, so you can figure out what's serving you and what's just surviving. When you're too close, it's easy to convince yourself that things are fine, that this is just how life is. But distance helps you realize how much you were tolerating. It helps you see the leaks in the foundation you once thought was solid. And here's the thing, this isn't always a dramatic separation. Sometimes the distance is found in silence, in a journal, in an early morning when the world is still and your mind finally quiets down enough to hear itself think. Other times, it might mean saying no more often, spending less time with people who drain you, or breaking out of a routine that's grown stale. It doesn't take a passport stamp to get perspective, it takes intention. You have to want to see yourself honestly. You have to be willing to hold up your life and ask, what part of this is mine and what part did I just inherit? What am I choosing and what am I defaulting to? Those aren't easy questions, but they're necessary ones. Because if you don't ask them, you risk spending years maintaining a version of yourself that was never really yours to begin with. When you finally step outside the house, outside the roles, routines, and reputations, you begin to see with sharper eyes. You begin to notice where you've outgrown your surroundings, where you've stopped taking risks, where you've settled for what was once good enough but is no longer aligned with who you're becoming. That awareness gives you power. You stop reacting and start redesigning. You stop fixing surface level problems and start addressing the structure. Maybe it's time to tear down some old walls. Maybe it's time to build an entirely new room. But you can't do that while you're trapped inside the space that needs to change. It's okay to outgrow things. It's okay to walk away from versions of yourself that no longer reflect who you are. That's not failure. That's wisdom. And wisdom often looks like walking outside, taking a breath, and looking back at your life with fresh eyes. Only then can you truly decide what to renovate, what to restore, and what to release. Reinvention doesn't happen while you're tangled up in the mess. It happens when you step out, assess it clearly, and return with intention. Just like a painter who needs distance to see the whole canvas, You need perspective to see your life in full color. And from that distance, something beautiful happens. You stop just living inside your life, and you start shaping it. You stop maintaining the past and begin imagining the future. That's when reinvention becomes real. Not because you escaped, but because you finally saw clearly enough to build something new. Most people think transformation begins with changing what they do, but the truth is, it begins with changing how they see. Reinvention starts not with action, but with perspective. It's not about jumping straight into the new you with a to-do list and a motivational playlist. It's about pausing long enough to recognize that the lens through which you've been viewing your life might be outdated, distorted, or just too narrow. If you don't change the way you see the world, you'll just keep repeating the same story in different costumes. Perspective is everything. It shapes how you interpret your past, how you understand your present, and how you imagine your future. Two people can experience the same situation and walk away with completely different lessons. Why? Because of the lens they're looking through. One sees failure, the other sees feedback. One sees limitation, the other sees opportunity. So before you change your job, your habits, your schedule, change the way you see yourself and your life. This is not just a philosophical idea. It's practical. Because the way you frame your experiences will either empower you or imprison you. If your perspective tells you that you're stuck, that you're too late, that you've missed your shot, then no matter what you try to build, you'll do it with hesitation. You'll hold back, you'll second, guess yourself, you'll carry doubt into every new beginning. But if your perspective shifts, if you start to see your story as one still being written, your challenges as teachers, and your future as something you can shape, then everything changes. That's when reinvention starts to feel possible. Not because your circumstances changed overnight, but because you did. You stopped telling yourself the same old narrative. You interrupted the pattern. You created space for something new by releasing the grip on what was. This shift in perspective doesn't always require a dramatic breakthrough. Sometimes it comes through a simple moment of reflection, a conversation that lands differently, a book that opens your mind, a walk where your thoughts finally untangle. The moment doesn't need to be big. What matters is that it's honest, because when your perspective shifts, your choices shift with it. That's the real turning point in personal growth. Not when the world starts treating you differently, but when you start treating yourself differently. When you stop defining yourself by your past mistakes and start recognizing your present potential. When you stop assuming that things will always be the way they've been and start asking, what if this time could be different? And here's something else that matters. Your perspective is not fixed. It's not who you are. It's a habit you've practiced. And like any habit, it can be changed. It just takes intention. It takes asking better questions instead of, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this trying to teach me? Instead of, what if I fail? Ask, what if I grow? That shift may seem small, but it rewires everything. It moves you from victimhood to ownership, from stagnation to curiosity. That's where reinvention begins to build real momentum. Not from chasing external goals, but from cultivating a more powerful inner dialogue. A dialogue that sees beyond your current circumstances. A dialogue that believes in your ability to evolve, even if no one else does yet. And this isn't about blind optimism. It's about honest optimism. The kind that doesn't ignore reality but chooses to believe that reality is flexible. That it can be shaped by vision, by effort, by perspective. You can look at the same life and either see a dead end or a new direction. You get to choose. So if you feel stuck, uncertain, or ready for change, don't just look at what you're doing. Look at how you're seeing. Because nothing changes on the outside until something shifts on the inside. That's the invisible moment where reinvention begins. Quietly, internally, powerfully. And once that shift happens, everything else follows. Your thoughts, your actions, your relationships, your results. They all begin to rise to meet the new level of clarity and confidence you've cultivated from within. That's the hidden art, changing your perspective not to escape your life, but to elevate it. And from that higher vantage point, the path forward often reveals itself not because it suddenly appeared, but because now you're finally able to see it. There comes a point in every meaningful transformation when the talking has to stop. The reflecting, the journaling, the visualizing. All of it is valuable, but none of it means a thing if you don't eventually move. Reinvention is not just an idea. It's not a theory or a mood or a spark of inspiration. It is action. And not perfect action, not flawless execution, but bold, imperfect, real-world movement in the direction of the person you want to become. This is where most people hesitate. They get stuck in preparation mode. They convince themselves they need more time, more clarity, more certainty before they make a move. But the truth is, clarity comes from action, not before it. You don't wait until the fog lifts to take a step. You take a step, and the path starts to reveal itself. The fear never goes away completely. The doubts don't vanish. What changes is your willingness to move forward anyway. The beginning is never clean. Reinvention is messy. You're shedding old habits while building new ones. You're unlearning the beliefs that kept you small and practicing the mindset that helps you expand. You're walking into unfamiliar territory, trying to act like a future version of yourself while still feeling tethered to the past. And that friction, that's where growth lies. That discomfort is the cost of becoming. You don't need a dramatic gesture. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow or move across the world. Reinvention often starts with a small, quiet choice that says, today, I'm going to live a little differently. Maybe that means saying no to something you've always agreed to out of habit. Maybe it's waking up 30 minutes earlier to work on a dream you've buried for too long. Maybe it's having one honest conversation you've been avoiding for years. These choices might seem minor, but they compound. They send a message to your brain and your body that says, we're doing things differently now. And don't expect applause. Don't expect the world to validate your shift right away. In fact, expect resistance from yourself, from your environment, even from people who love you. Because when you start changing, you disrupt the status quo. You reflect a possibility they may not be ready to confront in themselves. But don't let that shake you. This part of the journey requires conviction. It demands that you believe in the unseen version of yourself enough to keep going, even when no one else sees it yet. Action is what separates dreamers from doers. You can have all the vision and all the wisdom in the world, but if you don't take steps to embody it, you're just rehearsing the idea of change. Reinvention is a contact sport. You have to get in the arena. You have to stumble, course, correct, and learn as you go. Every misstep teaches you something. Every awkward attempt makes you stronger. Every moment you choose action over hesitation, you're casting a vote for your future. And remember, action doesn't just build results, it builds identity. Every time you act in alignment with who you want to be, you reinforce that identity. You become it through repetition, through consistency, through practice. You don't find your new self like it's hiding behind a curtain. You build it, one decision at a time. So if you're waiting for permission to begin, this is it. If you're waiting for the perfect moment, stop waiting. There is no perfect moment. There is only this one. This moment where you decide to stop being a concept and start being a reality. To stop thinking and start living. To step into the arena with all your uncertainty and all your courage and do the thing. Not because you're guaranteed success, but because you're committed to growth. That's the hidden art of reinvention. It doesn't ask for perfection. It doesn't demand certainty. It simply asks you to begin. Begin scared, begin small, begin unsure, but begin, because once you do, the momentum builds, the identity shifts, and the version of you that you've been waiting to become. It starts to show up not as a distant dream, but as a lived experience, shaped by your willingness to move.